Everything that goes into Gaza comes from outside. It is totally occupied and controlled by air, sea, and land. They can't even commercial fishing. They're not even allowed to commercially fish, or they'll get shot out of the water. The whole thing, shooting boats off the coast of Venezuela. We didn't start that. That's something Israel's been doing for years off the coast of the Mediterranean. So there's nothing that goes in. So think about every single thing you need in a day to survive: food, water, cooking oil, propane, fuel for generators, electricity, sewage, schools. Every single thing you need to survive has to come in. So March time frame, I believe it was maybe March 14th or 15th, Israel proclaims all of UNRWA is compromised. They're part of Hamas. Hamas controls it. 95% of the aid coming in, it all goes to Hamas. And without one shred of evidence, without one bit of justification, what in fact the intelligence community, the IC, the international intelligence community, the United Kingdom, the United States, France, Germany, Saudi, all the other, to include Israel's own intelligence, were like, we don't have anything. Where are you getting that from, Netanyahu? Bibi, what are you doing? Okay, well, if Bibi says it, and then where did he get that from? Well, he got it from Smotrich and Ben Gvir, who are, the modern day equivalent to the Nazis. They're horrible people, evil people. The things that they say. So that put a stop. That put an end to all UN aid. So prior to the stop, you had 400 distribution sites in the villages, in the neighborhoods, servicing hot food, medical clinics, pediatricians for the children, medicine delivery, food delivery, sundries, hygiene products, medicine, fuel. 550 truckloads every single day, around the clock, every day, coming into Gaza to sustain the population, not thrive, but to survive. Boom. March 15th, ceasefire. UN can't go anymore. Zero. Everything stopped. Every bag of rice, every bag of flour, every drop of water, every bit of propane stopped. Full stop. So when we went in on the 26th of May to begin operations to distribute, I thought we were going in with a force that we were going to surge and service all 400 sites with hot food and all these things. Oh no. The GHF only built 4 sites. 4. And they weren't providing any hot meals or prepared food, no medicine, no hygiene products, no water. No water. The only thing that the GHF was providing in the truckloads was dried food, parceled, packaged goods. A bag of rice, a bag of lentils, a bag of pasta, a bag of flour, a bottle of cooking oil, with no water to prepare any of it. It was mind-blowing. And on the very first day of distribution, we had distributed we didn't open all 4 sites. We had 4 sites, and we only operated 1, sometimes 2 a day, but usually only 1 a day out of the 4. We would rotate them. On that day, we were operating at a site 1, which is in southern Rafah, near the coast, near the Mediterranean, close to the border of Egypt. When the IDF released the holding line, 34,000 Palestinians rushed to the site on foot. I was standing on that site. The crowd was so large that the ground shook. Like, the ground shook from the amount of people rushing towards this site. And I thought to myself, from everything I heard, oh, they hate us, they want to kill us, they'll kidnap you. I sat right there and I was just like, it's over. This is where it ends, Tony. Had a great life. Looked at the guy next to me. I'm like, hey, bro. See, hopefully someone finds our remains. We're done. And 34,000 people onto this site, and not one of them was armed, and not one of them threatened us, and not one of them touched us, and not one of them kidnapped us, and not one of them tried to kill us, and not one of them tried to hurt us. In fact, because of the rushing coming over, I started like kind of like stepping backwards, kind of like, just at a jog backwards, and I tripped. And a Palestinian man that was there trying to get food helped me up and dusted off my back and kissed me and said thank you and rushed to go get some food. Those are the Palestinians that I met. People that are human beings that are trying to survive in a very, very bad situation. Not one of them was armed, not even a pistol, not even a club, not even a knife, nothing. They were there to get food. And 34,000 people rushing to this site, one site where they used to be able to go to 400 sites, coming to one site, and there was only enough food for 9,000 people. You think, man, anywhere in the world, you would have seen a riot or violence or protest. No, they went home and waited till the next day to get more food. So this narrative of the violence, and they hate us and they want to kill us and they'll take our opportunity to kill us and kidnap us and etc. Unequivocally not true. I went to every site. I didn't work at just one. I worked at all 4 sites. And I did part of the mobility team because I was the Joint Tactical Operations Center director. So I was in charge of all 4 sites and the mobility, not in charge of like making decisions, but in charge of like daily operations. And so I had to go everywhere. I saw all the sites. I came face to face with hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, and not once did I ever see one armed, and not once did one ever threaten.
Oh, I'm so glad you answered that, because I was going to ask you about what misconceptions Americans have about the Gazans. I think you relayed a lot of that right there. I do also want to talk to you about the atrocities you witnessed, and you've touched on that a little bit already, but you are, famous for having said on other podcasts that the IDF treats the Gazans worse than animals. And that it's so horrific to even hear that about human beings that, you're exposed to as part of your contracting duties. But can you talk about some of those atrocities, whether it's the, firing automatic weapons, the stampede inciting stampedes, and any kind of things like that would open people's eyes to what's really happening?
Well, so the on the 24th of May, I went into Gaza with the IDF. They escorted a select few of us to go to the site so we could actually see them. No Americans had been to these sites yet. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation basically gave the blueprints over to the IDF engineers and said, hey, go build these. We weren't even going to get to see them before the first day of distribution. And I was putting plans together, and I was like, okay, how many trucks can we get onto a site at once so we can do? What does that matter? I was like, well, geography matters. Geometry matters, to where if a truck is 40 feet long and I only have this much space on a site, how many trucks can I cycle through at once in order to get trucks through? I need to know the geometry. So how big is the site? Oh, we don't know. What do you mean you don't know? Like, who's in charge around here? So I asked the IDF that night. This was like on the 23rd. I was like, we need to go to these sites to get eyes on. The security personnel need to get eyes on. We need to know what we're getting into. Oh, like it was a burden. I was like, wait, this wasn't planned? We weren't going to see these until action day? Like, come on now, this is amateur. So they took us in, and so I got to see the sites ahead of time. So I kind of had an idea of what the sites were going to look like. And I knew immediately that these sites were going to be death traps. The sites, all 4 of them, were set in just inside the internal lines of the front lines of the IDF. So imagine, if you will, it's the Battle of the Bulge, and you're surrounded by, one side is America, one side is Germany, and you have the front line, and you have refugees or displaced persons, internally displaced persons coming from Germany because of the war to the American side because they want help. And you put the areas to feed them right on the front lines. Like, you put an area right on the front lines and you say, this is where we're going to feed the starving and the sick. It doesn't make sense rationally, but that is also a war crime forbidden in the Geneva Convention to put the unarmed population in harm's way. So I saw these sites and I was like, hey, this ain't gonna fly, man. We can't deliver to these sites. Your forward line of troops, your flot, is right in the line of where these civilians are going to be walking to get food. You're deliberately putting them in the line of targeting between you and the enemy or the known or the suspected enemy. We can't run these sites. And I was told, hey, shut up, this is how it's going to be done. And I was like, so I started taking notes. I'm like, man, this shit's going to get ugly. And sure enough, on the mindset that Israeli soldiers had, again, influenced, if you will, psychologically influenced by this haspara that comes from the highest levels, that y'all, shoot to kill, ask questions later. They're animals. They all want to kill you. They're evil. They're animals. They're less than animals. And I mean, just imagine when we drove into Rafah. So the three sites in the south, one being close to the beach, as you come down what's called the Philadelphia corridor from the Israeli border towards the coast on the Egyptian border. The furthest site was on the coast, so it was pretty flat, kind of near the beach. The second site was in an area that had been flattened, razed to the ground and flattened months and months ago. The third site was in a part of Rafah that had just been destroyed that week. Like the week that we were planning and preparing, they were bombing that part of Rafah. Like every night, like every day and night, the bombs coming in right on the other side of the border were, we had shrapnel flying onto our base in Israel, and they leveled it to the ground. And when we drove through on the 24th to go to these sites to see them, when we drove to site number 3, you literally had to drive your way through this maze of rubble. Just nothing left, having to find ways through this rubble. And you could hear humans screaming out from the rubble that were buried in tons of rubble, left to die. Feral dogs intentionally put into Gaza to roam were, that we saw a dog running down the street with a human arm in its mouth, and you're just like, where am I? This is a dystopian, apocalyptic, hell on earth. What is this? And at that point, all of my assumptions that I had made, it hit me that Israel is intent on a genocide. They're doing it, and it's intentional. And it was so obvious at that point to where what they were doing. Now, at that point, what I had not tied in yet was GHF's complicity in it. So I had a picture of, okay, this is what the IDF are doing. I still thought in the notion like that the GHF, we're still there trying to help. So at that point, I still saw that this was the evil, this was the bad, but that the GHF was still trying to do good. It was at the point a few weeks later where I tied in GHF is a part of this intentionally, that it was, for me, that it was case blown wide open. Like cases like, boom, this is now not an assumption, this is a fact. And I had to get out of there.